It's my conviction that the convention method is the best method that we can pursue right now to make an impact, to make change. As I said, Madison in 1830 said this in a letter to Edward Everett. You can search it online. He said, should the Constitution as herein reviewed prove not to secure the governments and rights of the states against abuses and usurpations by the national authority, he said, the final resort within the purview of the Constitution is an amendment to the Constitution according to the process applicable to the states. So you heard testimony that this was only to deal with defects. You can cherry pick the quote out of Federalist 43 where Madison said that, and he was right. It did address defects. But Madison also said that it addresses abuses and usurpations. Hamilton in 85 said it addresses encroachments. So whether it's a defect, an encroachment, oppression, abuse, sometimes we get messed up in semantics. We had one testimony said that Mason said it was oppression. The senator here said it was abuse, semantics. We all know the difference. Those are basically the same word. Let me just close by saying this. Us legislators here have federal functions as the Constitution gives us. Huck V. Smith, 1920, defined that there are certain functions in the Constitution that are given specifically to state legislators. Several of those are the Times, Places, and Manner Clause of Article 1, Section 4. It says the times, places, and manners of choosing senators and representatives shall be prescribed by the state legislators thereof. State legislatures thereof. HJ1 in the Congress this year tried to undercut our constitutional federal function to choose the times, places, and manners of choosing senators and representatives. Just recently in the $1.7 trillion Act, another undercut was Article 2, where it's the state legislators' federal function to decide how we choose delegates or electors to the Electoral College. In that bill, that took away that responsibility from us, our federal function, our duty, and gave it to the executive, whether it be Secretary of State or Governor, a direct undermining of our federal function. My point is that the Congress, or that the framers of our Constitution, gave state legislators certain federal functions to give check and balance to our government. In Article 5, it gave us a federal function, and that federal function is to push back on Congress. You heard all the fears that come about. Ultimately, you've got to put away fear and do your duty, just like I talked about with Uvalde or the city in Texas or Parkland in Florida. Those people who were given authority didn't take their duties seriously and didn't go in because of fear. SJ2 deals with fiscal restraint. We all know that the current financial situation of the United States is utterly shameful. It's on a dangerous and destructive path that will destroy our families, our freedom, our security in a hostile world. We need fiscal restraints. I'm not going to reiterate again the fiscal issues. We know $31.4 trillion, but no one has said that we're $277 trillion of unfunded liability. We have $12 trillion of guaranteed debt by the United States with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, housing bonds. We're going $1.2 trillion in the hole on payroll taxes. In other words, Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare. Those payroll taxes are $1.1 trillion or $2 trillion short every year. You have a demographic of 50 million Americans that are over 65 now. It's going to go to 80 million. That's not sustainable. We also know that even under President Biden's budget, he expects $1.2 trillion or $1.1 trillion, I think, of interest on the debt by 2032. That's just interest on the debt. And that's before interest rates came up. So we are on an unsustainable path. And as much as my good friends who are opponents here, many of whom I deeply respect, are saying we just need to hold our Congress accountable, it's not working. We've been saying that since I was a little boy. Not working. We have to take action. We all understand the concept of federalism, that the powers not delegated by the Constitution to the United States or prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. The concept of federalism under Article 10, or Amendment 10, was that we have certain reserved powers. Members of this body, of this legislature, it was our reserved power to deal with our water, our air, our coal, our oil, our gas, our pipelines, our forest, our timber, our education system, our police systems. Yet name one area of those where the federal government has not encroached in our affairs, and I believe it's time for us to put a stop by using our federal function under Article 5 to say enough, enough. Term limits, we keep hearing this, that we need term limits because we need experience in Congress. But let me ask this body, what has term limits gotten us? A balanced budget? Good tax policy? Good health care policy? A border? No. It's not gotten us any of those things. What we got is an entrenched bunch of dysfunctional, undisciplined congressmen who spend for their re-elections. No, we've gotten the opposite of that. We've gotten over 400 different agencies that control every minutia of our lives. You know, it's one thing to tell us what light bulb to screw into the socket. It's another thing to tell us what kind of medicine to take that could seriously jeopardize our lives and say, if you don't take that, you'll lose your job. For Washington to stop, we need to stop expecting Washington to change. Washington will not change because it's about power. It's about control. I said I would be hard on Washington, but Congress is about control. It's about control over you, your family, your money, the states' rights, every minutia of our lives. Remember, our founders did not fight a war against the British. They fought a war against big British centralized government. It's our obligation to bring back our government to a smaller government where the power is in the states. Democrat or Republican, we're all legislators here. All of us would want the power in our hands to delegate what happens with our coal, water, air, wildlife, wolf, grizzly bear, etc. We don't want that in Washington. That's why we're so divided as a nation. Reagan said this: Congress cannot discipline itself. We must rely on the states to force Congress to act on our amendment. This was a balanced budget amendment that he's talking about. Fortunately, the nation's founders gave us the means to amend the Constitution through the action of the state legislators. That is the only strategy that will work. Goes with a story. In my office, I have multiple monitors on my desk. One day I was working on this issue. My right-hand monitor, I have the debt clock up. You all know that the debt clock is. Go to usdebtclock.com. And on the debt clock, you see these spinning red dials that it'll make you go bonkers if you watch it too long. Seriously. And one of my little grandsons, Harrison, who's 6, came and he said, "Papa, what's that?" I said, "That's the debt clock." Henry, who was 7, came in and said, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, that's Congress spending more money than they have." And Harrison, who's 6, said, "Papa, why won't it stop?" Why won't it stop? We, members of this committee and members of this legislature, have a federal function, a sacred trust given by the framers. It is our duty, it is our hour to act. Let's stop it. It's in our hands. Thank you, members of the committee.